Cameron has lost the gamble with the referendum he called 3 years ago. With Britain voting to leave the EU, Cameron has announced he'll resign as Prime Minister, and uncertainty about the coming months has set in.
But the British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
Cameron has indicated that he'll step down when the Conservative Party holds its annual conference in October. Meanwhile, former London Mayor Boris Johnson, a vocal campaigner for Brexit and the bookies' favourite to replace Cameron, has called for calm.
It is vital to stress that there is now no need for haste, and indeed, as the Prime Minister has just said, nothing will change over the short term, except that work will have to begin on how to give effect to the will of the people and to extricate this country from the supranational system.
Cameron has assured investors that Britain's economy remains strong. He also says there'll be no immediate change in the circumstances of British people living in EU countries or Europeans living in Britain. European leaders have voiced their disappointment in the outcome of the vote and urged member states not to draw quick and simple conclusions. Scotland has announced plans for a second referendum. The UK and the EU now have 2 years to negotiate Britain's exit. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Well, let's bring you the latest now from Europe. CCTV's Jack Barton joins us live from Brussels. Jack, it's of course a momentous decision and a very historic day for Britain. The big question now is what happens next going forward?
Well, what happens next is at some point Britain must invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. That's the very vaguely worded clause that allows a country to exit. What would follow is 2 years of negotiations, but at the end of it, Brussels would have all of the say in what the end deal would be. What it means, though, is extricating the country from thousands of pieces of legislation covering trade to food safety and, of course, creating its own legislation to cover those areas. That would involve hiring thousands of civil servants, perhaps tens of thousands, and that, of course, requires finding a lot of money. This is as Britain is now facing a deeper deficit. The sterling is down, which makes paying off the country's foreign debt more expensive. It means the government's got less money, but it's going to need more money to spend. So there's going to be, it looks like we're moving into an economic crisis. There's a political crisis. On top of that, we've now got Scotland looking at the legislation for potentially another referendum so that it can remain with the EU or quickly reapply. And even in Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin calling for a referendum, not to break away as an independent country, but to merge again with Ireland. So much going on here. People are really just waking up to this. It seems in many cases there wasn't even a plan B in place. So there's still a lot of shock here in the UK.
And as you say, so much going on. And all this happening just as British Prime Minister David Cameron announces that he will not be finishing his term. Of course, that he will be resigning from his position by October. But a busy and rather uncertain couple of weeks and months ahead. Will David Cameron still conduct official UK business in this interim period? We know, of course, there's also a scheduled trip to Kenya in July.
Well, he says he's going to stay on to bring some stability through this period, but it's difficult to know if his agenda is going to remain intact. It would seem almost certain that he's going to spend most of that firefighting to contain any potential crises, the pound falling further, the trouble we've seen in the markets, and of course the political infighting that has now emerged. But it's not just David Cameron. Labour leader, well, it's many Labour voters voted for leave, and another Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, is facing a no-confidence motion on Monday, and it's expected he may not survive that. So Two leaders of the two major parties, one of them we definitely know is stepping down. It could be within weeks, it could be by October, but it seems even the opposition leader may also lose his job over this, even though he campaigned for Remain. Many people said it was very half-hearted. He was still walking around saying, well, I don't really like Brussels, I don't like the EU, and a lot of people in the Labour Party are blaming him for this success, for the Leave campaign.
All right, Jack Barton, live for us there in London, of course. Thanks very much for that update.